Ever thought about the time travel involved in Flash? I spend way too much time thinking about it. So I just wanted to talk about it since there's no episode on tonight. And welcome back to the heart of the stories we tell. I'm Rob the host, and this is another look deep into what makes a story, a theory on storytelling by a storyteller who believes that every story has merit. And tonight's episode is Time Travel on the Flash. Now, first of all, from the very first episode, we've had time travel stuff going on. Second of all, every season has had at least one thing going. Right now is Savitar, although in general we've had Reverse Flash, Savitar, Abracadabra, and many others, plus just Barry himself time traveling. We have a vault made by a time traveler full of all sorts of cool stuff. And of course, we have just in general weird anomalies popping up here and there. Let's not forget that this also ties into Legends of Tomorrow. Now, some of these things I can't explain. What makes Diggle have a daughter or a son? I don't know. I keep joking. Reverse Flash ran by and slapped Delilah on the ass while they were making love. I just don't get it. But for the parts that I can make sense of, I'm going to do what I can to put it together for you. But first, so once again, it's stop. Spoiler time. So right now, Barry has this problem. He's been in the future, saw his girlfriend die, now his fiancée, at the hands of someone named Savitar. But he's also run into a time traveler who already knew it was going to happen. Not to mention, he spent years working with someone who was a time traveler, and he didn't even know it. Now, this time traveler he just ran into knew the future and was a bit of a prick about it. Feels like I'm killing her, too. But in reality, he said that it was worse than anything this guy did to him. And this guy killed his mom. Now, I want to just say the Legends of Tomorrow uses a different rule set for how its time travel works. And I'm actually willing to give them the benefit of the doubt on this. Because if you think about it, the Wave Rider has its own rules built in and its own technology, but it doesn't have the Speed Force. So as long as they're consistent that Speed Force time travel and mechanical time travel is different, I'm willing to give them a bit of a leeway here, we'll say. But now that means that we need to deal with two different sets of rules, and I'm going to throw another thing in here. Because we have these people that can travel from Earth to Earth, and they know that the timelines don't change on other Earths. So we know that there are parallel Earths that have different timelines, but we also know that they can vibe those timelines and see timelines that no longer exist. Alright, so back to the most recent episode. This guy traveled back from the future and got stuck here, and was trying to build a way home. But you see, that then lies the problem. He needed to have the technology, but he already had the technology to jump from one world to another. So that means that technology isn't traversable. And this guy's supposed to be the first speedster. In the comics, there's a whole big thing about it, but he's also from the future, not the past. And you know what? Timey-wimey. All sorts of crazy. So let's get to the parts that actually make sense. I said ironically, because none of this makes sense. Just none of it. We're going to picture that the time stream is one big blue ocean. And within that ocean, there is a timeline. Now we're going to talk about original timeline first. In the original timeline, time began, time ran all the way through Thrawn's time, and ended. No big deal. Straight line. Easy peasy, because everything just happened cause, then effect. No one time traveled, ever. Not the Linear Men, not the Time Masters, not Thrawn. Now, Thrawn comes back in time, because at some point along this timeline, somewhere probably in the middle-ish, Thrawn is born, becomes obsessed with Barry Allen, and runs back to 2030, 2024, something like that. Has a bunch of fights with Barry, and he's already altered time, but we're not going to worry about those alterations because they all happen in our future. But at some point, he gets the idea that he's going to run back in time and kill Barry's mom. Now, at that point, I have to assume that Barry thought he was trying to kill him as a kid and rescued himself, and we create Timeline CD. Now, Timeline CD is the timeline where there's no Speed Force connection on our Earth, where Thrawn is stuck and has to impersonate Wells, and he needs to create a future where D can be as much like B as possible, or else he'll cease to exist. And this is where this gets important, because Thrawn is following the rules. He's making the timeline work. He's thinking through cause and effect, even when non-linearly. So what happens is, he goes and he has to create the accident that makes Barry, and he makes it happen faster, but as long as in his time period everything works out okay, We're in Sawtooth Snap territory. We're in A to B to C to D, and D can continue on till the end of the time. So we're fine. No mess-ups. However, you see, not everyone's as smart as Thrawn. Because, you see, now we have this other thing. We have Barry himself. And Barry runs back in time by accident when the whole city's destroyed. Which, remember, in the original CD timeline, Keystone's destroyed. But that's not the only time that happens. Because even though Thrawn tells him, well, Wells tells him, don't do this again, well, C. Savage won that fight, and then a bunch of other things happened, and then he went back to talk to Wells, and you know what? Like, seriously, Barry was so inconsistent and not being careful one bit. He changed times, and he was, if at any point F, H, or J didn't equal B, it could have been the end of the world. And then it was the end of the world. In order to stop Thrawn at the end of Season 1, Barry has to find a way to make it so that he doesn't kill anyone. And in doing so, Eddie Thrawn kills himself. Personally, I would have thought it would have been funnier if he just sent him a bill for his vasectomy, but, you know, heroes gotta be, like, heroing. At which point, the super careful Thrawn is no longer in control, and poof, the J timeline. In the J timeline, it can't happen. There's a paradox, and that paradox is going to break all of reality. So, it does, and this vortex opens up and the whole timeline's going to cease to exist. But Barry putzes with it, and Firestorm saves the day, and when Firestorm saves the day, it creates a new reality, one that doesn't work. If this were just a time travel show, this would be a problem. Because, you see, he just messed up the timeline so bad that it can't be fixed. We're no longer in a Sawtooth Snap. We're in an infinity loop. We're at the point where the whole world is gone. But the power of the Speed Source, plus the power of Firestorm, equals boom, we've saved the timeline. And if that were the end of it, this would almost all make sense. Well, almost. But then we have the end of the season when Barry runs back and saves his mother. Now, I cannot stress enough how dumb this is. He already knew that he was waved off by his future self. He already knew what the consequences could be in this action. But okay, he's hurting, and he does something stupid without thinking. I do stupid things all the time, I won't hold it too much. But now in this Flashpoint future, nothing makes sense at all. I mean, when you really think about it, he changed so much, it's almost impossible for you to really... But it's almost the A-B timeline, if you think about it. Because it's what happens... Because remember, Reverse Flash already switched things. He already killed the mom when in the original timeline he didn't. So did we just travel back to the A-B timeline in this? Now this is where the second part of the Speed Force comes in. Because when the Flash travels, or at least according to Jay, there are time booms, like sonic booms. And what happens is, it alters things in small, subtle ways. So even putting things back to the way they were, which is actually the second timeline where Thrawn had already time traveled, we have things that are different. And because of that, we have opened the door for Savitar and alchemy. So what timeline are we in now? I don't know. It's solidified now, though, I'm betting. At least that's the way the legends would talk about it. So we have this new timeline, and I'm going to call the new setting A-B if at any point from this point forward, because I think we've changed enough of history to where everything has reset to this being the original. Now, in the legends, we have this whole rule that the same people can't be in the same time zone, but we see that Thrawn can break it because of the Speed Force, and we have all sorts of other rules that we keep running into. And of course, Barry sucks at following rules. So my question to you is this: when Flash comes back, do you think he'll follow any of these rules, or do you think that it'll just be going up in smoke? Following time travel rules is pretty hard. In my time travel video, I actually jokingly said that experts on time travel have something in common with experts in politicians that are honest. Neither one exists. So, as we look through the different possibilities of how many timelines Barry and Thrawn could have created, and remember, these are just the ones I can think of right off the top of my head, it's entirely possible that there could be 100 timelines before we got to Flashpoint alone, and that's just in this show. But for now, I'm going to ask you to like, share, and subscribe to my channel. If you liked my insane theories, maybe you'll like the next one as well. I cover all the major shows, and I talk about time travel a lot more than I thought I would be. when I started to explore the heart of the stories we tell. Thanks for watching.